Okay, this is a Tuesday conference room with after Marilyn got done with her daily commentary. And if we look back, when we're first sitting down on Tuesday, Tuesday morning, we're sitting down at the computer and we're looking back at what happened overnight. Okay. This was close of yesterday, and what happened overnight was you had some chop. Okay, so I'm just going to put a chop box in here so I can kind of see just what happened from around settlement. You've got just some, just kind of chopped around. And you can kind of see, well, you can see, I guess I have my chop zone in there. Okay, so I'm going to take this box out just to keep it as clean as I can because it's a mess. Okay, so you can kind of see, making it bigger here. I had my yellow is my chop box. Okay, so I put it up a little higher. It goes where this high was at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:15. And I have it down where this swing level is to show where I felt the chop box was overnight. Okay, and that was just right in the last few hours before, it didn't show the whole overnight, but it was the last few hours. It was chopping right in here. Okay, and then we look at, whoops, I did not just do that. Okay, and then if we look at, back it up here. Okay, we look at, we have a yellow line here, my chop zone here and here, and I can't be sure of when these were put in. I forgot to mark when I labeled them, but it looks to me like they were set. This one was probably set right in here somewhere. I could go back and look. But anyway, this, we had a touch back, come on. We had a touch back onto this level, and you're approaching this chop zone, and it came down, and I really don't know if it broke it or what. Looking back when it broke what. In real time, it's real easy to do this. It is at 9:50. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's where when it put this magnet in was at 9:58. No, it's too high. I'm guessing it put that in right in here. Yeah, but this is, it didn't even reach it at 9:58. These ones, I'm talking about these ones right here. 4802, yeah, those ones down there. That one was put in later. No, I don't have a 4802. 4802.50, okay, I don't have that one in there. I do now. Okay, here we go. 937, 4804.75, that was this one. Okay, and that happened, okay, so that one happened right there. Okay. So we got that one in there. Okay, it's so hard to look back on when these magnets, once the indicator's finished, they will be just like the I zones, and they will plot from that point forward. So we'll be able to look back and see what it was when these came in. Right now it's really hard to tell, and my apologies for this because this is confusing. It's really difficult to look back and get a good idea of what was going on. But in here, the last, it's been like a week, we've had our first move right at open or right at like 9:35, and then we have like nothing. By 10 o'clock each morning or 10:30 at the latest, we're done in NQ. It's not giving us much else. So I'm kind of concentrating right with open and right after open before, when I'm going to do something. And on this, I was kind of looking at the accumulation and distribution. I've been really studying that. And I saw, and this is new, you guys don't have this out yet, but what I saw was you had some strong red volume in this trend, and then we're down to nothing. And we had some light uptrend, but it wasn't any volume to mean anything, and which is kind of expected because it's overnight. We don't really have much expected volume here either. But we still had a little more red than we did green. So the red to me is a little bit stronger, and we had a little bit more red. And so I'm looking probably to go for the action to go down here is what my bias is going to be, that it's going to go down. And as I'm looking here, we had the switch over to our red apex pattern. It's going red. We have the MVP going red. We don't have any real entries because this is a reversal. We don't take the reversal E's generally, unless you're going to scalp them real quick, and not something I'm going to do at this time of day, 6:20 in the morning. No, thank you. We had from 6:20 in the morning until open, we didn't have very many bars, which is pretty typical, especially in the summer. It's not moving, it's not doing anything. And we had an elevator here. And where is this elevator? I mean, it touched back to almost the same level as this elevator. I really like that kind of goofy stuff. And so we finally had open, I guess it was, this bar was 847, so this bar went from about 847 to open, and it just was kind of messing around here, and it touched back exactly. I like those when they touch back exactly, and a lot of times I'll wait for it to go back down. But if it touches back exactly on a magnet, when you had this bar open and close below the magnet, there was probably no magnet right here at this point. It probably formed a magnet here. It's hard to say if it was a little bit earlier. Yeah, I'm guessing this was probably where they laid the magnet down, actually. Okay, thanks, Craig. And this is where they laid the magnet down. And so it touched back. What I was looking at is it touched back to this level that this had made. It was acted as a support point at this elevator. Well, now it's acting as a resistance point, and I like that. And at this point, it left a magnet, so I'm gonna have a small stop on it, because if it goes past, I don't want to be in there. So these magnets are fabulous. They're usually not that important when they lay them down. It's when they come back to them that's bigger. It's much more important when it comes back to it. So this is something that probably, not having all the information I had, if you did this swing, break out a chop and the swing, you're probably 3 ticks below, and you had your 20 tick stop, you would have come up and scared you a little bit on this one. But if you had your stop in the right place, 20 ticks up here, you're still going to be okay, and you would have been able to ride it down. And I think it put this magnet in here, so you don't know where it is. I guess I haven't marked my chops up, my charts up yet, so you guys don't even know what trades I took. This was the only one I took this morning, and I got out down here. It was chopping after it hit. I don't remember if it came down and got me out and then it hit, or if it came down and I just wanted out. I don't remember now. But anyway, it was starting to chop around, so I'm not going to want to be in once it's chopping. I'm done. I sat through this one, and that's enough. Because it already had started, the trend had already started from settlement, and I like it when it starts from settlement, although I'm not going to get in at 6 o'clock in the morning. When I look back, I see it started from there, and generally I'm gonna assume it's going to have a decent amount of ticks. So you know, once it gets down here and lots of nice trend volume here, I really like this. But I'm going to start to protect when it starts to chop. So my stop would be around 5. It would up here, yes, because I took it as a touchback. So my stop would be around 5 because I was looking for it to go on down through my little chop box here. But if you were taking a swing out of the chop box, then, you know, you still could have taken this one, although it landed in the middle of nowhere. You could have taken it as a chop on this yesterday's magnet, and that would have been really probably a better bet, I guess. It didn't land right on it exactly, so that's kind of iffy. If you wanted to let one bar close under your chop zone before you took it, you could have done that. And if you would have had a order one tick below this magnet from yesterday, you wouldn't have gotten stopped out, I don't think. Let's see, the magnet's on 75. You would have had it at 50. You would have got almost exactly 4 ticks. So you wouldn't have, you would have been saved by 1 tick if you would have taken this touchback to this magnet line. It overshot it just a little bit, but it still would have been okay for a touchback getting in. So that was, I happened to get in on this one because I had a little more information. But this would have actually been a really good, let your bar close down below your chop zone, and then it touched back up on this magnet, almost stopping you out, but not quite, and then take the ride down. Would have been a lot less heart attack here and not have to sit through this going back up. That's the only trade I took on NQ today. So that was, that's basically what I saw this morning. I've been asked a lot of questions on how to use these magnets, so I'm going to go through just a little bit on that. And the import, I'm going to pull forward and see what it's doing. Okay, I wasn't watching when this trend came. Let's see what we had. I normally, when it comes down at the bottom of a trend, a nice move, I'm going to expect chop, and that's kind of what it started doing in here. So just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and draw a chop box and see if we just let it chop around before we try to jump in. There's our chop box, the high from where it came close to the close, let it come down, and where that's a pretty good forming chop box. So when it breaks out of that, pull this over, that would have been a pretty decent trade you'd have. And this is a pink magnet, meaning it's from today. It was probably put in here. I think we said that already. So when it passes that magnet and that chop box, you would have had a good, nice little trade, breakout of chop. And it did come down and touched this magnet, another good touchback. This magnet was, this might have formed this magnet actually. It's hard to say if this went right down there. This would not have been a good touchback for just any old thing really, because this 8 EMA was going through this bar. This bar did not open and close above this magnet if it was here, so this wasn't the best choice of a touchback. Looking at it a little closer, you know, it wasn't saying, hey, this is a really good, but yet if you have your stop, if this magnet was here and you were going off this magnet and you waited until it started really going up, then you might have, you know, it would have been not too bad. I wouldn't have wanted to have an order waiting here because it was not a good touchback setup. It's one that I do these sometimes when I after it starts to go back up, after it's bounced exactly off a magnet and it's heading back up, I will get in sometimes, and then I'll have my stop just 2 ticks below here, or maybe 3 ticks below here. So you've got a little bit more. It formed right there. Okay, so this magnet wasn't here then. Okay, so you didn't have that to go by. Okay, see, I was not watching this at all, so I wasn't really sure. I added this later. Okay, thank you for that information. So you didn't have this to know that this magnet was not here at the time. It's so hard to look back and talk about magnets because I don't know where they were, especially when I wasn't watching. So you didn't have, this would have been just a touchback hoping on nothing, but it wasn't a good setup because the 8 EMA was going through this bar. It didn't clear the bar before it, and this didn't open and close. There was no level here. If this magnet was not here, there was no level to touch back to. So you got nothing for a touchback here. You pretty much just had your swing out of chop. If you would have taken that, that's all you would have had to take this run going back up, which personally I probably wouldn't have been looking for because I like to see more of an entry most of the time, and I don't see anything really. And you could have gotten a quick scalp off the E going down. I'm not a really big fan of, once it's had a nice move up or down and then a move back up, you're gonna have chop. That's why I use it yeah. That's a smart thing to do. I just wasn't watching. Once I got done with this trade, I was doing some other things, so I was not watching what's going on. So I'm kind of in the dark as to what happened today. I don't even have all the magnets. I don't think I have them all marked. So, but to use the magnets, this yellow was the top of my chop box. To use the magnets are really just use them as markers. They're kind of landmarks. You don't take a trade based on them only. You use those as a target as to where you're going, and if there's a lot of them close together, I know we have several zones of interest that I did not mark, so I don't even know where they all are today. These little dots are zones of interest, but I know I don't have them all marked because I saw them flying through the room and I did not mark them. I wasn't watching. But we know that the market is going to come back to that zone of interest. We don't know when, we don't know much about it, but you're not going to expect that it's going to come back to the tick like it does a magnet sometimes. All you know is it's probably going to come back. So like, let's just say that this was here. And I can't say it was or it wasn't, but let's just, for an example, say this zone of interest was here. You go through the zone of interest, and you have yesterday's magnet, you've got some today's magnet. It didn't even get up to today's magnet here, and what's happening? This zone's pulling it back in. And so it's going to come back, and what happens? It goes back again. It doesn't always create a chop area, but I think we have several zones of interest real close by in here. And the more zones of interest close by is the bigger the chop area. We have a lot of, you're going to have a lot more chop with the zones of interest. And you just kind of expect them to come back time and time again, and they will. Sometimes if it once leaves that area, you're probably going to have a good trade if it leaves it and really goes somewhere, but I wouldn't expect that on an August summer day in the afternoon. You're pretty much done. That's what I would expect anyway. That's why obviously I don't trade it then, but that answers your earlier question on the M&M's. Good. Okay. I don't know what the question was, but it's really, you don't want to take a trade just because it's hitting one. If they're close together, here's a good point I want to make. If they're close together, and say this trend kept going through, you do not want to take a touchback off this first magnet. If you've got a trend, and I'm going to say this trend was going through this magnet line here. I'm going to change this color just to make it a little more so we can see it. Okay, make it a white. Whoops, that's not the color I wanted. Okay, so your trend is going up through here. You've got two magnets in here. They're fresh from today. Okay, and your trend is going through, and you have a bar that opens and closes above this magnet line here. you do not want to take a touchback to this magnet line and have an order waiting, because it could very easily come down to this one as well. If you do take a touchback to this line, you make sure your stop is below this one. It doesn't matter if there's, if you had a 4 tick, this is your line. If you had order sitting a tick above this, and your stop would normally go 4 ticks below, well, maybe this line is 5 ticks below. You want to have your stop a couple ticks below this line at least, because it's a magnet, and if they're too close together, 2 of them close together, it's going to act as an area rather than an exact line. If there's no other magnets close by, I would tend to put it just maybe 2 ticks below the second one. You don't need all that room. If it's going to keep going, you don't want to be in that trade. You've already lost the momentum, and you don't want to be in that trade anymore. So I wouldn't go a full 5 ticks below this one necessarily if there's too close together, but never ever do you want to take the first one, because it can always go to that second one easily. You never know. Or if there's a zone of interest right below it, don't take the touchback. That zone of interest is going to pull it down, and you're likely to get stopped out. You're more likely to get stopped out than you are to have a touchback. So that's really important. If you have a zone of interest, like right in here, and you're looking, let's just say that, here's a good thing not to take. Let's just say that the chop box was here, okay? And let's say this chop box was a magnet, and we had this bar open and close above the magnet, so we've got a good touchback setup. This bar was also above your 8 EMA. Hey, this is looking great for a touchback. So you're thinking, great, I want to set my order a tick above this line and wait for it to come get me. Not if there's a zone of interest right below you. Never, ever, ever, ever take that one, because chances are that zone of interest, just like it did, is going to pull you down, and you'll have your stop hit every time. That zone of interest is definitely going to pull you down. You don't know where it's going to stop. It's not like a magnet that it a lot of times will stop on a dime, but it's going to stop somewhere. It's going to at least go through that area again. The odds of it going through that area are higher than the odds of it stopping at your touchback. It's always about stacking the odds in your favor, and you have not stacked the odds in your favor if you're trying to take a touchback right above a zone of interest. That's why we call them out. They are pretty important, and you don't take a trade just because it goes into a zone of interest. You don't take a trade just because maybe it bounced off the zone of interest. So what? You don't take that trade. You have to have your valid entries, but you know of the landmarks that are around you that might trip you up. That's why it's so important to mark these things on your chart. And you don't take a trade because it's hit a zone of interest or because it's gone through one, no. But if you're in a trade and it's hitting your zone of interest, you're probably going to get through that zone, but it could go through it and bounce right back through it, like it has several times here. It's just really bad. And I don't know again when that came into play, but it will do this. And so that's really important to know that don't take a touchback if there's a zone of interest that it will hit your stop. If it's going to hit that zone of interest, don't take it. And you don't want to worry about putting your stop on the other side. Then your stop's getting too big to be a touchback, and it's not worth that kind of a risk. A touchback is a riskier trade. That's why it only has 5 ticks of a stop. It's worth it most of the time if you have a good setup to risk 5 ticks. But if you're pulling your stop down, you're thinking, it'll hit, it'll go back up. No, dream on. You're not anymore putting the odds in your favor. You're reaching for a trade, and you never want to reach for a trade. you want to have the odds in your favor, and you're not doing it. So don't even think about that. So I'm so glad that, we went over that, because that's really important. Important little things about these magnets and these zones of interest, and we really don't know what it's going to do around a zone of interest. It's a zone. It's not something specific, but you really don't know. And if you get a lot of them together, you're definitely going to have chop. So be aware. The first zone of interest is at the 935 bar, so it was way over here. Okay, it's probably the only one I have marked. 46.0. No, it doesn't look like I even have that one. Okay, so I missed that one. So you had there was a zone of interest down in this area that I don't have marked even. But at that point, I guess it was right up in here. Interesting. Okay, well. So, any other questions on magnets or how to use them, or any specific? The 1018 bar, we had another one. And let's see, 08, 09, somewhere in. Okay, that was this one. So that came right in here. Okay, so that came in here. So you didn't have this zone of interest. Okay, so it would have been, if this zone of interest wasn't here, if you had a level, which I don't see anything to touch back to, then at least you didn't have the zone of interest before this point. You had it after. But look, it came in here, and it came back, and it touched up here, and it came through on this bar. Here, it couldn't quite touch it, so that was kind of nice. Maybe we're done with this zone, but we don't know. We don't know what it's going to do. Okay, no, we weren't done with that zone of interest. Look at how many more times it went and wiggled through it. You're getting the tutorial on mini magnets right here and now, Rich. We don't have training on it yet because it's not out to the general public, and there's just a forum post on it right now, and in this room, what we go over. And this is I am recording it. It will be loaded later, so you'll have this information to go back on. Yeah, we're still learning the importance. Like, we call it a zone of interest because we really don't know exactly what it's going to do. We know these mini magnets act as magnet levels, and if you've worked with magnets before, there's no difference. A magnet it's where you might target a stop. You might hide a stop behind it. You might expect it to go to that level. If there's a lot of mini magnets in one area, you can expect the area is going to be an area of chop. If there's very few magnets in that area, then the magnets themselves become much more important. I'm going to try to find some. By the middle of the week, it's getting tougher. Okay, here we don't have all the magnets. We had. This was not in yet. This zone. These magnets, I believe this one was laid in here right here. I don't believe this magnet was in here yet. So we had smooth sailing. We had nothing. We had clear skies here to come down. And that is a good thing. That's where, we were bouncing. It originated off a settlement, and it came down. When it finally came in off open, we're going down. And that was pretty cool. When it comes back in, look at all the congestion that's starting in here. When you're starting to get into an area of congestion, lots of magnets, expect it to not go through it quite as easy. At the very least, it's going to probably settle down and chop around a little more. You're probably going to get more slings, more slings, and but when you have an area with a lot of magnets of the same color, especially, like I start my week out with white, and then I get a little darker, the next day is pink, and the next day is a little darker, and then to the Friday is a dark blue for me, because it's gone from a light white into a dark blue, and that's how I can tell what color my days are. You just have to know, you have to have a system that you can figure out. And when you've got a lot of zones of interest with a lot of magnets in the same area, or a lot of zones of interest together, you're going to have a choppy area. And that'll give you a clue often that you're going to have chop coming up. Sometimes the magnets will lay in before the chop gets there. And when that happens, you know, when it comes back to the area, you're going to hit some chop. More than likely, you're going to hit some chop. We never know what it's going to do, but it's all about stacking the odds in our favor. So, yeah, I use the 10 tick C's, which is probably really more confusing for most people once you get, because I like all my levels on here so I can see what's happening. I've got my ice and my high of the day, low of the day, and now I've got all the magnets, and for me it's a roadmap. I mean, it gets easy for me. This is pure roadmap to me. I don't see all the lines and confusion that a lot of people probably see, and I apologize for that, because it's probably really confusing. But this will probably be up by tomorrow. Maybe it'll be up later today at some point, but by tomorrow for sure it'll be up. So does that help with the magnets, how to use them? I mean, as soon as they're called, it's a good thing to plot them. They aren't of interest the moment they're called. That's not the important thing. But they are of interest when the price comes back to them. That's when you. It'll be under newest webinars too. It'll pop in under newest webinars in the forum, probably under the C's. But I'm not sure where exactly that'll be. It may be under the mini magnet section. Well, today it will be under the mini magnet section. That's where I'll have them put it. Because we're talking about the magnets and how to use them and how to look out for those zones of interest. That's why I put my zones in the little dots, because it helps me see that's a zone of interest. There's no question. It's pink, it's from today, and it's a dot, so it's a zone. The magnets stand out more. They're a dot dash, and they stand out big time, but the same color is going to be, for me, the dots. So I can see a definite difference, and at the end of the day, I take my zone of interest all off, or it gets too confusing. So I've removed a couple magnets today that the price went through several times and it didn't hesitate at that point, so it's no longer something the price reacts to. I removed it. I don't know if they're good for a day or they're good for longer than that. I have just found that it's too confusing if I leave too much on my chart. That's one thing that's got to go. And it's interesting, Craig said he takes his zone of interest off the same day as well. So I like that confirmation. Thanks, Craig. It's a learning process. What we're doing here is we're basically testing how to use these. And we're dragging you guys with us because we see how important they are. They're huge levels that are really important. So we want you to have access to them. So that's why they're called in the room. The only place that they're available is in the elite room. Every day you guys get them. So you have a leg up, because we can see the next day they often turn into the red ice, the green ice, settlement, the highs of the day, lows of the day. They're really important levels. And this is, we just, how to exactly use them for entries, they're not meant for entries. They're not meant, well, for exits possibly. When you don't have a lot of them in the same day, for example, you've got one here in pink. It's today's magnet. You've got one down here in pink. That's today's magnet. Those are pretty far apart. If we did not have this zone of interest in pink, this would be a good bouncing from one magnet to the other. Look at this. It almost reached it, came down and hit this magnet, But it's not a good look at it because we did have a lot of zones of interest in the middle. So that totally gets rid of it. But if you have them far apart, you can, of the same color, you can a lot of times jump from magnet to magnet. But that doesn't happen when you have zones of interest in the middle, or a lot of magnets of the same color in the middle. And yes, we need, when you guys, we're calling these out and you guys put them on your chart, feedback of how you're seeing things helps us too. So, what creates the magnet level? It's created on our order print chart, and it's just a specific phenomenon that happens, and it's really only with the Apex order prints charts. It is something that is unique to Apex, and it's something that will print out. When that comes out, you guys will have that all on your own, and I hope that we still are calling them in the room, because boy, on my own, I miss them all the time. I get them out of the room just like you guys do, because I can't keep up with watching them. If I'm done trading or before I trade, I'm looking for them. I have a really hard time keeping track of them while I'm trading. So I really get them out of the room, just like you, all you guys do with the general toolkits. So you guys have unbelievable good advantage being in the elite room. I mean, this is huge. You've seen how these magnets hit. And so it takes a lot of concentration to catch these. Yeah, I don't do that so well. It's confusing, and you really have to kind of sort through it. And that's why I'm trying to go over how these magnets work. If they're farther apart, the individual magnets become more important. This is with any instrument. It's with anything. When the magnets are farther apart, the individual magnets become more important. When there's a lot of magnets close together from the same day, the area becomes important. That's going to be drawn back to that area, and it's probably going to become pretty choppy. If there's zones of interest, then it's going to probably be drawn back, and it doesn't draw back to exactly the zone, but that will create a little back and forth chop usually. And we are hoping to get it on Forex any day. We're working really hard to get this stuff. The zones of interest, I guess, aren't quite on Forex. But it will be. And order prints does not usually work on Forex for most other places, and ours will. How cool is that? So that's the main points on using the mini magnets and the zones of interest, and so that's my main. Just be careful. You don't want to take touchbacks if there's a zone of interest right underneath you. If you're going north, if you're going on a buy, on a long trade, if you've got a zone of interest under you, do not take that touchback. If you're heading down and you have a zone of interest above you, like for this, this is a good example right here, and you can see that it didn't work. But if you were looking to take a touchback, here you had this a low of the day from yesterday, is what this orange dotted line was. You had a bar open and close under you, okay? It under the low of yesterday. So this bar would possibly be a good touchback. You had the, it looks like, it's hard to tell if this EMA probably would have clipped this bar actually, but you did have it break through this level. So you're thinking, okay, you're going to put a touchback here. Think again, there's a zone of interest right above you. So no, you do not want to try. And what happened? It came up and it did go through that zone of interest. It no more than go through it and comes back down again. So it really gives you an idea of when not to take a trade. As much as anything, it's telling you when not to take it. And I know you're thinking, oh gosh, too much information. I can't process all this. Well, that's you know, it'll get easier. I promise it really will. But it's, you know, this would have told you not to try and take this touchback because you have a zone of interest right above it. So, at the very least, it stalls momentum. It does. The zone of interest does stall the momentum big time, I've noticed. Exactly. So, any other questions, comments? I want to shut this recording off as quickly as I can because I don't want to drag it out. I like to keep these as close to 30 minutes as I can so you've got short spurts to watch through. So if we're done with the zones and the magnets, the mini magnets and the zones of interest, I'll go ahead and shut the recording off. We can still talk about whatever you've got going, but if we've got this part pretty much covered, I'm going to shut the recording off.